children, and that's why the more educated women are not having children.
I think when you ask what is the return is that the kids go to college and then they come back and they live in your house. I think that's what's happening in a lot of cases.
If it happened and they did the housework,
true.
That's a return.
That's true. A lot of kids just come home and slack off. But I think that times have changed dramatically, like you said. In the old days, the people were, putting their children to work on the farms. They were going into sweatshops and working, and then child labor laws really changed that. You couldn't put children to work at very young ages to help the family. But now, because things have changed so much, children, and in this case I'm talking about young adults in many cases, they go off to college and then they feel like they can't really get the job they want until they get their master's degree, and maybe they need to get their law degree or their medical degree so they can get that high yielding job. So I think we're not really seeing a return in children until they're in their 40s, 45, 50, and they're not really children anymore.
And yes, and they have their own families and they take care of their own families, which is well and good. But, if you look at it, what's the return in a modern child today? And that's the question he's asking. I thought it was kind of funny one, so I thought I'd bring it up to Darshan viewers.
Well, I think it's a very good fact, and I think it's also something that parents need to think about as they're raising those children, how they treat them in soccer practice and all of those competitive sports. When every kid gets a trophy, you're teaching the kid, everybody wins. Real life is competitive, and we want them to bring home the bacon to the parents and treat their parents well. My parents are going to love that I'm saying this because they're going to be like, we are showing up to live in your house tomorrow.
It is every parent's wish to see if the kids will bring in their salary and say, hey, Mama, here it is for you. Give me an allowance. I can live with it. It doesn't happen in real world these days.
My parents are still holding on hope. Maybe I can send them like $1 or $2. I wonder if that would help any. Probably not.
You're really making those women sit up and say, wait a second, you're right. It doesn't make sense. I'll spend the money on myself.
Well, it's something else to think about is that women particularly worry about this mommy track and this mommy time away from the business and away from their careers and how that affects their profitability in the long term. If they have a child, you're going through your career and then at 40-something you decide to have a child, you're taking yourself out of the market and you're making yourself less profitable in the long run. So, yeah, you're wondering about the payoff of the child. Yeah, love is important. Love is great. Family is wonderful. But people need to buy couches sometimes.
I have children, and I want to tell you, they're the greatest satisfaction of my life, and they're the greatest wealth in my life.
I think that I am also the pride and joy of my parents, but I don't think you can really put a dollar value on your children.
I agree with you.
Well, in other news this time out of New York, the very famous restaurant Tavern on the Green has filed for bankruptcy. Now, little bit of difference here that people are confused about. Tavern on the Green is a restaurant, but it's on a spot that is owned by and leased out to Tavern on the Green restaurant family by New York State, and they've also lost their lease. So if you want to visit Tavern on the Green, now's the time because they're not going to exist for very long. Everybody knows the name, and name recognition is very important. It's so important to Tavern on the Green that they value their brand at $19 million. But that's really not going to help their bankruptcy. They've lost the restaurant. They can't do anything about it. And a new restaurant will be in that spot. They're going to start doing refurbishing of that building and change the restaurant just a little bit. The new family that will own the restaurant are the same people who brought you the Central Park Boathouse restaurant. And things are changing, but hopefully not too dramatically. I mean, can you imagine New York without Tavern on the Green?
Hey, it's called competition. They did not offer as much rent to New York City as the boating restaurant. Mm-hmm. And they offered to refurbish the property, and of course they are going to enlarge the property. So they said they would be able to pay more rent. And that's competition. They've been in there for a very, very long time. So time to move on. New people come in, new food. But I want to tell you, I've been to Tavern on the Green a number of times. They had the best food. There have been Indian weddings that have been performed up there. I mean, it's one of the great venues.
It's so great. It's the second highest grossing restaurant in the country. The first is out of Las Vegas. But Tavern on the Green, you would think that they wouldn't need to file for bankruptcy. But we're going to miss out on this.
Hey, when you lose your lease, you take full advantage of the law not to pay your bills. And that's what is happening. But moving on.
Oh, I was going to say that the restaurant closes on December 31st. So what an awesome New Year's Eve party to have at Tavern on the Green in New York on their last night.
I want to tell this family to take the lease that expired. Take it to New Mexico, to a festival called Zozobra. It's a festival where you burn your gloom and doom. This has been going on, folks, since 1924 in New Mexico. This past summer, because of the recession and other things, 20,000 people showed up. They had all kinds of things. For instance, if a wedding did not happen and you had the wedding invitation cards, well, you can take your wedding invitation cards and put it in that zozobra, Let it burn. Burn, baby, burn. All my troubles, divorce papers, people who had cast on their arms or legs, or the foreclosure papers, or even if you were in a hospital where you're about to die, you brought the gown home, take that gown, put it in there. Every country in the world has something that they burn that's evil. In New Mexico, you burn your world worries. This is a 50-foot effigy.
Wow.
In India they burn Ravana. And everybody says, oh, we just killed the evil. Well, here it is. They burn the bad memories, everything.
And you can add to the pyre. I like that. You can burn all of the things that you just want to get rid of and cleanse yourself
That's right.
for the coming year.
Actually, you feel so much better when you see the thing that worried you, which is always lying in one corner of the house, is no longer there. It's just gone. It's forgotten. That divorce paper is final. Just burn him. You don't need him no more.
Can I do this in my own house? Can I have my own local zozobra and just kind of get rid of the stuff that I don't want to have
People
around
do
anymore,
that.
maybe?
They actually used to have parties. When your divorce was final, you had parties and